Okay, I'm going to get started. So today's topic is actually one of the most important topics you may ever hear. And it's important if you're a partner, it's important if you're an associate, it's important if you're a law student. And just at the outset, there's kind of two types of attorneys. There's the type of attorneys that have business, and when you have business, you're kind of operating your own business, and that's very, very helpful because you have clients, and the clients are coming to you and they're giving you work. And if you're that kind of person, then law firms will aggressively compete for you, and you'll never really have any significant issues with employment stability and with staying employed anywhere or anything kind of along those lines. And unfortunately, if you don't have that, then it's actually much harder to be an attorney. And the reason is because the law firms typically do not have much interest in people once they get beyond a certain number of years of experience, because usually that's 7 or 8, because they want people with business. And so they want younger people to do the work, and then they want older people to bring in the work and give work to younger people. So that's kind of the model of law firms. And if people don't fit into that model, what tends to happen is they look for other opportunities. They go in-house, they go in the government, and all sorts of things. And I can tell you from experience that most of the attorneys that I know that have a lot of business actually really enjoy practicing law. It's fun for them. And they have clients, and they feel a sense of responsibility. You feel more of a sense of control over what happens to you and how you use your time. And it's a lot of times that lack of control that people without work feel that makes the practice of law so difficult and so stressful, and why people leave in such great numbers. So this topic is extremely important, and I hope that I'm able to really offer you some insights today and help you. A lot of my practice is working with partners and finding partners, and I've been doing it for over 20 years. And actually, my first placement I ever made was a partner. So I have a lot of experience. I watch how people get business and what makes people successful. And I really hope that everything that I say for you today is going to be very helpful, because this topic is huge. It's one of the most important things that any attorney can understand. Let's get started. And what I will do too today, just because this is such an important topic, is throughout the presentation, I will, if you have any questions, I'm going to cover kind of 9 different ways for people to get business. And so if you have any questions after each section, just ask the questions, and I will try to answer them during the presentation. And then when we're done with the presentation, I will also take time to answer as many questions as you have. So if you're on this presentation, you've made a great decision coming to it, because this is a very important topic. I'm going to teach you how attorneys get clients. I'm also going to teach you why everyone you meet is a potential client, and just a few things about the legal profession that you may not be aware of that I've already kind of brought up. But most people, when they're in law school and when they kind of come out, they believe that success requires you kind of billing a lot of hours and doing good work. And for the most part, that's what's important when you're working for someone else, another attorney in your firm. But when you get out, other things become more important. And most lawyers come to understand that even more important than that is your ability to kind of generate business. So I'm going to teach you today kind of how lawyers get clients, and also how clients find the lawyers that they work with. And just another thing that I wanted to bring up quickly is that your success as an attorney really is important, but having security is something that's very important too. And so if you don't have business as an attorney, then you need to go to work for other people. And attorneys that work in-house or they work for the government, many times they don't have any employment security. And what that means is they could lose their job at any moment. Most attorneys that I see, their resumes that have gone in-house, have worked in numerous in-house companies, because companies go out of business, their legal department changes frequently, and all sorts of things happen. In the time that I can remember since, say, 2005, when Google first went public, the number of changeovers in the legal department has been crazy. I've seen so many people come and go there, and that's just one company. And so the same thing happens in most companies. And then anytime there's a new CEO, they will bring in a different management. So you really do not have a lot of employment security when you're in-house. You don't have a lot of employment security in many government positions. And when you have business, you actually have employment security, because clients keep coming back to you again and again. And the other thing is you also can control your income. So that gives you, having business gives you a lot of control over your income because you can make more money depending on how much business you have. So here are the top 9 ways that attorneys can get clients. So the first thing that I've learned from many of the most successful attorneys out there is that every person that you meet could potentially be a future client. It's many attorneys and even law students don't believe that different people that they meet could be a client or might someday be able to be their client. And it's funny because I go around, I live in Malibu, California, and there's so many real estate agents in Malibu. Like there's literally more real estate agents. There's like 3 times as many real estate agents as there are sales and leases in the city every year. So everybody's kind of competing for all these big leases and sales. And so what happens is every time I go to a party, invariably I'll find myself talking to a real estate agent. And many times the real estate agents, or a good portion of the time, have no idea who I am. And they're always trying to figure out who I am and if I could be a potential listing many times. And so I typically will, not give any details about myself. I'll be very, very opaque with them and act like I couldn't possibly be a client or someone that would have a house worthy of listing. And invariably, those people will just kind of disappear and ignore me and go somewhere else. So that's how a lot of attorneys are too. Like when they're out there looking for clients, they may ignore the building janitor. They may ignore the person that sells them auto insurance, and they may assume that someone that they didn't get along with in the past could never work with them. And these are all types of people that I've seen in my history have been able to give business to other attorneys. I once knew of a janitor's son who went to Harvard Law School and was the general counsel of a major computer company in California. And someone was very nice to him that was an attorney and got him business. And then an auto insurance salesman was the son of a CEO of a well-known American insurance company and was able to give business. And so these are all examples of people that you may have ignored and in the past, and that people I've seen, that other people didn't ignore, and were able to get lots of business from. And so all these people that you meet in your life, if you have a positive interaction with as many people as possible, and you're nice to people and you take interest in people, many times they have more power than you can realize. I'm thinking of another example of a guy that owned a small meat market kind of grocery store in a town I grew up in, whose son became a very, very powerful executive, the head of a major U.S. company. And so it's all these sorts of people can help you. And when I was practicing law, I got business from people I never would have expected to give me business. And just people that never in a million years would I have believed to have given me business. One of them was a graphic artist that I never thought would really do anything, and started a very large design firm that became a decent sized company. And he referred other designers to me, and I did all their contracts and other work and litigation. And so and I was nice to him, and I always had a good relationship. So you just can never underestimate the people that you meet. And no matter what you're doing, you have to realize that anybody you meet could always be a potential business. It doesn't matter what type of law firm you're in. It doesn't matter at all. Every person you meet can be a potential client, no matter who they are. And how you act towards others will also determine whether or not they like you in the future. And one of the things that I've noticed that kind of runs through these relationships is when the real estate agent comes up to me at a party and tries to figure out who I am and if I'm important, is nice to me, and if I don't act like I'm important, walks away. That's an example of what you might call a snob, and someone that's only concerned about you for one thing. And when you take interest in people and you're nice to them, regardless of whether or not they need help, and regardless of what about them personally or what about their standing, those are the people that are most likely to come back and work with you many times. It's not the people that you expect. It's like when you do something without expecting something in return, and you're nice to people and you go out of your way to be nice to people. And every time that I've done that, I've actually ended up getting work. One of the ways that, and it's on, I think on it's either on my blog or on BCG, but there's a thing called the Garbage Man story. And I'm going to tell it to you real quickly, just because it's actually a fairly important story in my development. When I graduated from high school, I had a kind of an asphalt business around Detroit where I was going around and putting asphalt sealer in people's driveways. And I had so much bad luck and I lost so much money doing it that I actually, after just having all sorts of problems with it for several weeks, losing all my money and having all sorts of accidents and so forth, I actually quit the work and became a garbage man for minimum wage. This is in the summer after after my last year of high school. And so I was a garbage man. And even though I was a garbage man, I decided that what I was going to do is I was going to go back and just to do the right thing. All the work that I'd done over the summer that hadn't turned out well, I was going to go back and I was going to go fix it all with the money that I made from being a garbage man, because I decided that part of me just didn't want to go back to school knowing that I didn't do a good job on some of this work. And I had no background in this type of asphalt work or anything. So I was in a hardware store towards the end of the summer, or kind of a big convenience Home Depot type store, and our home improvement type store. And I met a guy. His name was Al Wyman. He was going to pay someone that worked for him to go back and to put this asphalt sealer all over his condominium complex on all the asphalt around it. And he was looking to buy some stuff and so forth, and what materials. And so I sat there and I told him about how to do it and how much he needed and so forth for over an hour, and how the process worked and how he needed to mix sand and all these different things. And I didn't want anything in return. And then as I was leaving, he asked me if I could go take a look at it and how much the work was worth, so he knew how much to pay the guy that was going to do the work for him. And he was just a maintenance guy. And I said, sure. So I went and I measured the whole parking lot, and I told him, this is how much you should charge and so forth. And he said, thank you. And then a couple of days later, he called me and he said, do you want to do it yourself? And I couldn't believe it, because the job, I don't know, it was like $3,000 or $4,000, and it would cost maybe $500 in materials or $600. And I said, sure. And so I went and I did it, and I made $3,000 in maybe 3 days, which was a lot of money 30 years ago. So the point is that when you give people something in return without any expectation, I went and I measured it for him without expectation getting it. I gave him all this advice without any expectation getting anything. That was one of the most powerful lessons that I've ever learned. And the lesson is that you need, when you offer and you give people advice and you help them and you don't want anything in return, then good things will happen. And for me, that was it changed my life, and it gave me so much self-confidence, because I ended up coming back from that and started this business that grew, and it became very profitable and gave me a lot of self-confidence. And over the next several years, and I had enough money when I went back to school, and I felt very good about myself. So if you learn to do this stuff properly, it can really make a difference. You should never take any vendors you meet for granted. So the dry cleaner, anybody who mows your lawn, mechanic who fixes your car, all these people can be sources of business from you. And the reason is because they meet other people like you all day long. And they meet people with companies, they meet people that tell them their personal stories. The same thing with everybody you meet, even your lawn service person. And you should stay in touch with these people and always be nice. One attorney I know that always got a lot of business always was very nice about tipping people and being very loyal to different vendors and so forth, and that helped him. The other thing is one of the biggest sources of business for many attorneys is their peers and their subordinates and people that they work with. Staying connected with people that you worked with early in your career is very important. So attorneys that stay in touch with people from law school and check in with them constantly, attorneys that stay in touch with college classmates, high school classmates, previous employers. I know one attorney that just brought in a major appliance store in California, and he actually worked in that appliance store during high school and college and just stayed in touch with his boss. And then his boss kind of rose up, and he never did that expecting anything in return, but his boss actually rose up through the ranks and became part of the executive office of the company and so forth. And now it's a huge client of his. And this guy has developed tens of millions of dollars worth of business that way. So this sort of thing can help you. And so you need to do that. And you should never assume that anyone can't help you in the future. One of the things that I thought was one of the most interesting discussions I ever heard was I started my career at Quinn Emanuel, and John Quinn and Bill Urquhart, who's since passed away, but gave a presentation about how to get clients one day. And at that point, the firm was pretty small. It was like 45 or 50 attorneys. And now it's over 1,000. But he said that One of the biggest mistakes, this is what John Quinn said, that he ever made was not being nicer to people that he met in law school and early in his career. And he said he wished he had done that, because if he'd done that, he would have gotten more business later on. So the people that get business really are the people that tend to be nicer to people, and they're nicer to everyone that they meet. And that can be very helpful. You shouldn't even take your relatives for granted. Relatives can be a source of business. They love to tell people that you're a lawyer or can use you for legal work. And so your relatives will always go away and I'll go around and will tell people about your background and so forth. And so relatives can be very, very helpful for you to get business, and you should treat them well too. You should stay in touch with people, because they're just kind of a PR organization. They meet people and they're very proud of you, and they say that they're lawyers, and then people remember that. So you should do that. All of your former employers. Former employers are a great source of business. As in my particular business, I can't even begin to count the number of people that I used to practice law with that have referred attorneys to me to work with, and have referred themselves to me to work with, and have come into positions of power and asked me to help their law firms find people. So there's just so many different people that can help you. And your former employers can really be a great source of work. It doesn't take much time to reach out to people and see how they're doing. It takes a few minutes. So you can check in with people and you can talk to them and ask them how they are and so forth. And spending a few minutes doing that can really make a difference, and it can help you, because those people will reach out to you on Facebook and all sorts of places. Spending a little bit of time with people. Some of the business people that I know that do the best practicing law, if I ever text them or something and ask them how they're doing, and not text them, if I text them or if I contact them through LinkedIn or something, they respond instantly. They're just kind of always there communicating with people, and you feel like you're always connected to them. And that's important. You should never burn bridges. You always want to have your former employers be your advocate. And that's one reason also why you want to work hard and you want to do a good job and you want to do the best you can wherever you are. Very important. You should never take your superiors for granted, people that you worked with. If you do a really good job when you're working for someone, that person will refer work to you in the future. At my second law firm that I worked at, I worked for one partner, and I worked very hard for him. And then he wanted to move firms, and he had me help him. And then later on, I referred other partners that had been my superiors to me when they wanted to move firms. So if you work hard for people, they will help you and in the future, and they will give you business, and they will give you cases that they couldn't work on. There's lots of very well-known law firms that pretty much, if you go there and you do a good job and then you go to another law firm, will refer you work, lots of work, and that they are conflicted out of it, they don't want to do for whatever reason. And some of these other law firms may, in addition to referring you work, they may, even if you have a solo practice, they can refer you work. So the best law firms will typically do that. And just treat everyone you meet, inside and outside work, as a potential client in the future. That's really the most important thing. If you treat everyone as a potential client, then those people are likely to come back to you, and they will work with you hopefully in the future. So everybody needs to be looked at as a potential client, and just think about creating good feelings towards yourself and having people feel like you help them, and you could help them if you professionally represented them. And that's the feeling you want to set up. You don't want to feel like you want to feel like someone that would want you as an advocate. And just think about my experience, the garbage man story, and where I was going back and fixing houses where I didn't do a good job, which is kind of something I didn't have to do, but I wanted to do, and where I gave someone free advice. And one attorney that I know said that one of the ways that he's gotten his biggest clients is to look for people that are running businesses or have been in positions of power inside of businesses and that may need help, and giving them free advice and stepping in and helping them without expecting anything in return when they might be able to use it. And then those people a lot of times will come back. So that's always important. So I wondered, does anybody have any questions about the first part of this presentation? No, I can continue. But just remember that every person you meet really could be a future client. And that's honestly one of the most important lessons you can ever meet. And that's where most of the clients of people that I've seen come from. The other thing that's important is making sure that you always talk about your work. And this is something that the best lawyers do as well. And It was funny. One of the ways I learned about this, and it was actually longer than 20 years ago. It was, I don't know, a quarter century ago. But I was in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was in a class about franchising, and it was an awful presentation. It was in a hotel ballroom, and it was a 3-hour PowerPoint presentation from an attorney at some big old Southern firm wearing a bow tie. And the attorney must have been he was in his, I don't know, probably his late 60s. And it was incredibly boring. I couldn't even follow what he was just kind of droning on. He had no enthusiasm for the subject matter. Anybody sitting there didn't have any enthusiasm for the subject. It was just a horrible presentation. It was so boring. I don't know how anyone possibly could sit there for as long as this thing took. It was just absolutely horrible. And I was sitting like a couple seats away from a teacher, and I think I started, shooting spitballs at my classmates. I was so bored, and he saw me, and it was just horrible. But the thing is that every local owner of a Burger King, McDonald's, Subway, and other franchises, and all these people turned out for this event in this hotel ballroom. And it wasn't a big ballroom, but there were probably at least 150 people there. And the funniest thing happened, though, after this event. It was just, I don't know, but it was just a horrible presentation. But the point is, it was just, I don't know, I've kind of made my point here. But the point is at the end of the presentation, all of these owners of local franchises who'd been invited to this event and had never, you could tell, it was held at a kind of a nice hotel in a ballroom. And all these people, I don't think anybody had any idea what this guy was talking about. The only thing they knew is he was someone that was talking about what he did. And there was a huge line of people after the presentation that stood up and told him they enjoyed the presentation and gave him his business card and so forth, and then told the guy that they wanted to ask him questions or talk to him, and if they could set up a time to call. And so what I realized is that this lawyer probably picked up a bunch of clients that day, and all he had to do was get up and talk. And so when you think about it, one of the things that attorneys need to learn about is you need to learn about talking about what you do and making sure that you do it in a way that clients can see that. And all this guy did was invited a bunch of local people that had franchises to talk, and then talked about whatever he was talking about. And I didn't even know then, even though I knew it was to do with franchising. And people, just because they showed up, were hired him. And it's the same thing with any attorney. Like, if you talk about what you're doing, you're likely to get business. And if you want to get business, you need to talk about your work, because people will see you as an expert. If you're out there writing and speaking, doing podcasts and other things, people will know who you are. You probably know who I am because I talk about this stuff and I'm interested in it. That's another thing, is you have to be interested in it. But if you want to get business, you need to be out there talking about your work, and people need to see you as an expert and believe you're good at what you do. It's very common in trust in the states. Trust in the states attorneys, you wouldn't believe it. Some of these guys are making $1 million plus a year, and they have very easy ways of getting business. They will buy a list of everybody who's over 70 in a zip code, and they'll send them a letter inviting them to a lunch. And they'll get up there and they'll talk about the importance of a living trust or a will or something for an hour at a lunch, and then walk away with $150,000 worth of business after a lunch that cost them $3,000 or $4,000, if that, plus mailing. Like, all these people do is talk about business. It's very easy to get business if you talk about what you do. And I have hired attorneys before based on them having an article about something. Like, one time I hired an attorney because there was an article about option law in real estate, how to do a real estate option and what parts of it are illegal in California. And the article was 2 paragraphs, and it was the only person I could find that knew anything about it, and I hired them. So people just will hire you if you just have something out there. If you write about it, if you list that you're an expert in it, whatever. You just have to talk about what you do. It's very simple. And then think about your position too. Like, if you want assistance with something, you're going to go and you're going to try to find the people that are the most enthusiastic. So talks, webinars, being enthusiastic about what you do. When people hire doctors, for example, they always will say, my doctor has got this award, or my doctor wrote about this, or my doctor's an expert in this. And probably not, the doctor's probably not even an expert in it. They just say they are. It's just you have to talk about what you do to get people enthusiastic. And this means being enthusiastic about it and telling people about what you do. And it means talking about your work with people from your office, and it means talking about your work with your clients. And it's just being enthusiastic about it. Think about how many attorneys that are just dry, that don't care about their work, that don't write about it, that leave, don't have any interest in it, that don't particularly want to help their clients, that don't. These are the people that clients don't hire. And these are the people that don't have any business, and they also don't have any employment security, and they don't have businesses, which means is what you get when you have a business practicing law. And so you need to get out there and talk about what you're doing. And you need to be enthusiastic, and you need to like what you're doing. And that's who people want to hire. Like if you think about every important business figure in this country is enthusiastic about their work. I'm thinking, who's your example? Elon Musk, very enthusiastic about electric power and space, and we know that. And every lawyer that is well known is very enthusiastic about what they do, whether it's whoever, Dershowitz, or whoever you want to come up with. Any lawyer that you ever can think of that is a household name that's well known, is enthusiastic and talks. And so the reason is you need to have enthusiasm, and you want to be remembered by everyone you encounter is someone that enjoys work. This attorney that got all this business talking about franchising law, think about what would have happened to him if he actually was interesting, if he was able to connect with the audience and people understand what they think. He would have gotten even more business. And so you really need to talk about what you do. And one of the most interesting things is that one of the best marketing lines I've ever heard is you can build a better mousetrap, but if the world doesn't know about it, they're going to beat a path right around your door. And it's true. People need to know that you do what you do and know that you're enthusiastic about it. And the thing that lawyers, many times, there's just like this whole kind of follower mentality where people like will put their heads down, and where they don't want to be seen, and they don't know how to market and stuff. And it's crazy, because in every other profession, like the people that stick out are the ones that get the business and get the work. And I notice this sometimes on Zoom conferences. Like if I go into a Zoom conference and it's with these different firms, like the most uptight firms, everyone will have their cameras turned off. And then on the firms that are getting the most business and doing the most, when I'm talking to attorneys that get a lot of business, they all have their cameras on, like Zoom conferences. But the ones where they're just kind of followers and people aren't getting a lot of business, all their cameras are off. So you can tell very, very quickly, like who's good at this stuff and who's not. And the people that are out there and want to be visible and stuff are the ones that do well. Why do you think restaurants put billboards on highways, or you have multiple billboards saying, only 4 more exits until you can get the best piece split pea soup in Ohio, only 3 more, turn here? And people get enthusiastic about stuff because of this sort of thing. So you need to talk about your work. You need to write, you need to get podcasts, you need to talk to your clients, you need to figure out something and talk about it publicly, because that's how you will be found, and that's how you will get business. And why wouldn't you want business? I told you at the beginning that you need employment security. Having your own business means you have your own business. You have a business. Some attorneys will move firms every 5-6 years with their own business to get more money, in the law firms, when you have business, I want you another thing to understand, you don't work for a law firm when you have business. The law firm works for you, providing support, referrals, and so forth. And so wouldn't you rather a law firm work for you than the other way around? All you need to do is talk about your work. And anybody that's putting their head down and not doing all this stuff is just hurting themselves. Let them be part of the group that's not getting work. Okay, the other thing is, if you want to give business, you need to set a good example. So there's one quick question, and this is about free advice, but I will take that, I'll take that question at the end, because that's a good question. So there's lawyers who want to give business need to set a good example. So the other thing is, you need to look like the type of attorney that you would want representing you. So you need to think about, what type of attorney would you want to represent you? And what type of attorney would you want if you had a problem? And just think about that. And so I've typically hired attorneys for clients. I'm an attorney, so I've been an attorney with business, and also in position of hiring attorneys. And there's several things that most clients are likely to be concerned about when they're hiring you. And one of the things is, and these are all things that people that you work with and will see. And these are things that your friends will see and other people's will see. But one of the biggest things is your level of honesty. And I certainly would never want to hire an attorney that I knew was the least bit dishonest, especially if someone was billing you on an hourly basis. So if you tell people that are close to you that you've done something dishonest or you do something dishonest, or people think you're dishonest, like I've seen attorneys that have overbilled and I know that they did, and I've seen attorneys that have lied and I've seen them do that, then I wouldn't trust them. And I've had plenty of opportunity to refer work to attorneys, and I just know something about them wasn't honest. So honesty is very important. If you can't trust someone and you don't look trustworthy and you've done something that's untrustworthy, you need to fix it and preferably not broadcast it. When I was practicing law, I knew at least a couple of attorneys that made up their hours, including one of the highest, not one of the highest, but a very high ranking attorney in one of the firms. And I had an example where a friend of mine in the office next to me came into the office on a Friday and worked all the way till 7 a.m. on a Monday, and then took a shower, and then he went into the office after catching a quick nap in his car, and he saw that the partner had written down that he'd assisted him for 25 hours over the weekend reviewing and making changes to the brief, and the partner hadn't worked at all. So that's pretty scary. And from my standpoint, I'd probably never use that partner for work ever again. I would be very nervous if that guy was ever working in my thing, because the associate had come in after taking a shower and napping and stuff, and had shared our secretary with that partner and seen his bills and saw that he billed that, and he knows he didn't look at it over the weekend. So the idea is that if you're dishonest, even in your personal life or your work life around people from work, this is going to get out. And so you're always being tested. And the minute someone doesn't trust you as an attorney, that's a problem. And the idea is people just want to work with people who are honest. And you want to be dealing with people who are honest as well. And so you just need to set a good example. And if you're honest, people will say that and they will like that. Another thing that I've seen is different people are entitled to have different types of personal lives. But there's some attorneys that just like to, several that I know, and that like to have a lot of fun. They will do out of control partying and all sorts of things. Those types of attorneys, typically a lot of people also don't want to use, because they will assume that they're tired and not making good decisions and unable to moderate themselves. And I know of one attorney that was going to get an offer from a major law firm in Silicon Valley, and a partner took him out for drinks, and he had 3 or 4 drinks. And this was after he basically been hired. They were discussing him relocating. And when he saw how much he drank, he just said, no, this isn't going to be a good fit for us. And then didn't hire him. And I remember, I'll never forget that, because the guy had looked very, very hard for a job. And the law firm probably made a good decision not bringing him on, because he did drink too much and had been a problem for him at different firms. But that was a problem. So if you examine the most successful law firms that have been very successful, what most of them do is they look for steady people who are not particularly mercurial and seem competent. And they want people that are just going to sit down and do the work and not create problems, and who can be trusted and so forth. So you need to remember that. And you always want to act and behave as you'd want your own attorney to act and behave. So attorneys don't think of themselves this way, but you're actually a representative of the justice system, and you're, to the average person that's not an attorney, they look up to attorneys and they expect them to act and behave a certain way, and that's important. So you want to really come across that way and as someone that can be trusted. Another thing that's important, and I did talking about your work earlier, but another thing that's very important is, if you want to get business, you definitely need to be interested in other people and their legal issues. And people want to be helped by others that are actually interested in what they're doing. And you need to be interested in the work you're doing. You need to be interested in the work and the more interested you are, the better you are likely to do the work. And so many people actually are not interested in the work that they're doing. And the reason is because it's quite obvious. So all the time, and I make this mistake too. So someone will come to me with a problem, like in terms of looking for a job or whatever. And I will a lot of times know the solution or things that they should do. And I'm interested in kind of telling them my solution because I'm interested in it. But a lot of times I won't listen and get all the facts. And that's a problem. And people that are interested in work will do a much better job. I once hired an attorney and I went into their office, and I've hired lots of attorneys, but this particular attorney, I'm thinking, I went into their office and they told me how great they were and how they could solve all my problems, and without even really knowing anything about it. And then so the meeting was almost over, and then they asked me real quickly, like, how did I get in this trouble that I need this attorney for? And it was a contract matter or something. And I could tell when I started talking, they were completely bored and they started kind of looking away and down and so forth. And that showed me that they really weren't interested in what I was talking about. And it turned out to have been a horrible choice hiring this particular attorney. So, because they weren't interested in the work and they weren't focused. So, if you're interested in what you're doing, people are going to care. They're going to realize that you care. And it's very important. And in having a mindset kind of where you're doing your best and you're speaking up and you're asking questions and so forth is going to really make a difference. When you're interested in something, you tend to come up with much better solutions and you can help people. And if you're not interested in something, you're just kind of going through the motions, you're missing information. And if you're not interested in what you're doing, whether it's your practice area or practicing law, or you don't find the people or concepts you're doing interested, then that's a problem, because the best attorneys are very interested in what they're doing, and you just have to be. And very few attorneys are really good at understanding other people's problems. One of the most successful attorneys I know, I've noticed that a lot of attorneys these days, the best ones, will modify their kind of online LinkedIn and other settings, and they'll call themselves like an expert in finding common solutions to problems, or they'll have like little things that they talk about in their, like, even in the headline after their name. They talk about how they're interested in other people. And that's, if you were a client, think about it. When you go to a doctor, you want to tell the doctor your problem and you want to have them understand it. When you go to an attorney, you want the same thing. And that's what we want from all of our service providers, is we want people that will connect with us and listen. And then the more people are allowed to talk, the more people will feel invested in the process in you. And when others feel invested with you, they want to work with you more closely. And I'll tell you something that's kind of a secret at BCG it really kind of driven my whole career, is when we work with someone, like, we always will ask them lots of questions about themselves. We'll have them fill out forms and questionnaires, and I will ask them questions and get lots of information, and then communicate that information to the law firms. And that makes our candidates get a lot of interviews. And I do the same thing with the law firms that I talk to. I try to learn about them and the people there, because everyone's an interesting person. And when people have the opportunity to talk, they're more invested in working with you, and they're more invested in, and they want to be invested. So you have to let clients and other people talk, and you need to be interested in them and remember them and their families and their, in their birthdays and other sorts of information. It's all very important. Because if you have that information, you're going to do much better. And you should allow people to speak at length. You should allow them to unload. People feel so much better after they talk about things. I can remember, I've gone in romantic relationships before. I can remember one time years ago, I went with this romantic partner. She wanted to go see a therapist. So we went to a therapist, and it was a 1-hour meeting. We sat down, and she basically told the therapist everything that was bothering her for an hour. And then I was there, and I didn't say anything really. And the therapist didn't say anything. We got out, and she said, I feel so much better. I don't feel any problems anymore. And it was just the idea of being able to talk that made her feel good. And so clients are the same way. Like, when they get the chance to talk, like, they feel good. And think about yourself. If you can talk, you feel good. So people need to be able to talk, and that makes them feel better. And one time I went to a branding company, and the branding company, I was talking to them about something, and I don't know, these branding companies will look at your logo. I don't know what they do, but they come up with they help your company have unifying message or something. And anyway, so there were two companies, and both of them were charging $250,000 to do a brand audit or something. I don't know what it's called. And two of them came to the office, and one of them talked about how they were a big company. They'd done a lot of work. They had good employees. And I never said a single thing. And all they did was talk about themselves. And so therefore, I ended up using the other company. And that's what a lot of people will do. They'll assume that because they're at a big law firm, or because they went to good schools, or because they've done similar work. When you're not interested in other people and don't ask them questions, then that's a problem. People want you to be interested in them. So the people we'd like have the most interest in us, the people we don't like typically don't have interest in us. And people want to feel acknowledged and understood. The thing that's missing in most of our relationships is connection. And if you think about the most popular websites out there, it's things like social media sites. And the reason those are the most important is because those are the ones that give people connection. And people want connection. And the more you can give people connection, the better. People want to feel acknowledged and understood. And if you're interested in other people and ask them questions, that's going to make them feel understood. And being interested in other people is crucial to being a good business generator. I mean, all the attorneys I know, by the way, that I knew when I was younger that have a lot of business, that I've known for a couple decades, they'd always call and be interested and ask good questions and just be really likable and want to talk to people. And that's what the best attorneys do. And you just need to do that. One of my mentors, is again, anyways, it's unimportant, Jay, and he gave a story once where he got on an airplane for like a cross-country flight and decided that he didn't like it when people tried to talk to him all the time because they recognized him and stuff. And so what he did is he decided that he was going to talk to someone this time and ask him questions the whole trip. And so he sat down, and the guy next to him, he just started asking him all these questions. And the guy talked the whole length of the country, this 4.5, 5 hour flight. And when the flight was done, the guy said, "This is the most interesting conversation I've had in as long as I can remember." And it was interesting because my mentor didn't talk about himself at all. He just asked this guy questions. And so people are most interested in themselves, and people want connection. So you need to be interested in other people. You need to be interested in their legal issues. You need to let them talk. And even if you're the solution, people want to talk. And the more you listen and the more the person feels like you understand them, the more they're going to want you to work with them. The other thing is, in terms of getting business, is if you want to get business, you need to get out there really, and you need to form relationships. And really the way to do that is you need to get out and meet people and expand your comfort zone. And you need to learn how to break down kind of the boundaries of formality and get outside your immediate sphere of influence. Most young associates do not build books of business because they don't prioritize getting work. They're not getting out there and meeting people. And what you need to do is you need to get out there and you need to go to events where other attorneys are likely to be, and even events where you're likely to stand out because you're an attorney. A lot of attorneys will join all these kind of random organizations that you wouldn't think. They'll join local community organizations, school boards, hospital boards, and things, and where there aren't a lot of attorneys. And that ends up actually being an important source of work for them. So anytime you're part of a group where there's not a lot of other attorneys, you can get works, or you can get work. And also social situations. So you should go to lots of social situations and just meet people. And people like to ask who you are and what they do. And people love actually referring other people to attorneys. I get referrals all the time from people that think I'm a practicing attorney, even though I'm not, just because people ask me what I do. And I tell them that I used to practice law, I'm an attorney, but I do this now. But people still, even with that, will refer work to me. So you need to just meet people wherever you possibly can. And if you don't start to form relationships, then you'll be someone who can't get business. You need to form these relationships, and you need to get out there. And that just means taking opportunities to go to different types of social events. And just when you go there, not thinking that you have to meet someone and get business, just going there and having a nice time, because the business doesn't come by you being a snob and going through and seeing who might give you business and who not. There's a remarkable number of people you can get business from. I remember once I was at a party, and I go to some of these parties, and I'll be standing around, and these are parties with my kids. And because of where I live in Malibu, like, these people are dressed like in surf shorts and all sorts of stuff. And they could be, a guy could have tattoos all over him and lots of facial hair and stuff, and could be the founder of a huge company. And many times they are. So you have to just get out there and meet people, and regardless of who they are, be nice to them and just form different relationships and get in groups and boards and anything you can, because all this stuff leads to business. And you have to have this sort of connection that I've talked about earlier in order to get that business. You have to be able to connect with people and meet people in order to get work. And it's very, very important. All of my successes, I can really say, have been when I've gotten outside of my comfort zone and met people, at least some successes where people have helped me with things. And you have to get out there and meet people. It's so important. That's where business comes from. That's where change happens. If you're in the office all the time, that's not going to happen. You need to prioritize that sorts of things. And one other story about John Quinn. This guy used to go out for dinner several days a week with clients, potential clients, and all sorts of things to meet people. And it would be in all sorts of events. And so that's how it works. The other thing that's important is to specialize. And attorneys who specialize always get a lot more work than those who don't. And if you have a specialty, you're going to do much better. People refer clients to specialists most times, especially in larger markets than non-specialists. If you specialize in something like litigation, that's good. But if you specialize in representing, for example, disposable lighter manufacturers that explode, or injure people, that's even better. So if people can point to you as doing one type of work and there's not a lot of people like you, when it comes time to recommend people, then that can be very helpful. So, good marketers will typically have the ability to be seen for one thing or another. Like if you need to buy a book online, you immediately think of Amazon. And if you need to think of different types of things, you need to be seen as the logical decision and the person that people want to use. And very few people do this. Many people try to say, I do litigation, I do a little bit of corporate. One of the biggest things that I talk about with the recruiters at BCG, and I have these conversations every day, is your candidates that they work with, in order for them to get jobs and get as many jobs as they possibly can get, you need to make them look like specialists. And so they need to be very good at one thing. It's better to be like a workers' comp litigator than it is to be a general litigator. It's better to be, to do employee, there's just millions of specialties. It's better to be a patent attorney specializing in computer circuits than it is to be a general patent attorney. Like every type of attorney needs to be specialized. And these are the type of attorneys that people hire. There was a period, I think it was between 1997 and 2000, when anybody with a decent idea can make some money on the internet. And I remember I used to drive to work and I'd get the Wall Street Journal in the morning and I would kind of be glancing at these stories and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like these people, these businesses that were getting all this money and stuff. But there were very few people, there were a lot of people getting investments, but there were very few people making money. And the people that were actually making money were doing very, very, very simple products that were specialized. So they might be selling bird cages or battery replacement batteries for cell phones or cases for Palm Pilots, which were popular back then. And these people were making a lot of money back then. But people that were trying to create these stores that were doing everything were not making money. Even Amazon back then was only selling books. So being a specialist is the only way to really grow things. You may have noticed at BCG, only do law firm placements. Why would I want to do something where I would be known for doing multiple things? It's everybody has to specialize it and specialize. And so what happens is if you have someone that needs a bird cage, they would search for bird cages and the website that did nothing but bird cages would come up. And then if someone talked about how they were an expert in bird cages and they made the best bird cage, then you would be much more likely to buy their bird cages than you would to buy a bird cage of someone that sold bird cages and televisions. You'd be much more likely to do that. And that's how people are. The other thing is if you need an attorney, let's talk about franchise law again. If you need an attorney to help you with the regulations of franchise law, then you're likely to use the one who appears to be an expert in franchising, especially if you're the only person in your area doing this. I know a woman that started a very successful business doing nothing but software as service contracts for her own law firm in California. And she gets so much work that she's a solo practitioner that she's just kept increasing her billing rate. And the work's still coming because she's the only person that people find when they search for someone to do that work in her area of California. And if you are specialized, let me just tell you, you have everything going for you. I know people that are specialists now in privacy law, people that are specialists in different types of things. And you have to be specialized. If you were a client, I know someone that just had not too long ago this is a crazy example, but they had breast augmentation surgery and they went to see someone that did nothing but that. And there's plenty of people that can do that. But This person went to the biggest expert, the one that was supposed to be the best, and a member of all these boards that did nothing. This is how people choose service providers, especially lawyers. They want people that know what they're doing, and they want people that are very specialized. So you can't be all things to all people. There's lots of attorneys out there that will say, oh, I do this. Yes, I do that too. I do this. And they think that's going to get them more business. No, it actually works the opposite. Think of the solo practitioner I'm telling you about that has no marketing experience, that only does one thing, and is the only person that's found doing software service agreements and just keeps raising their billing rate. It used to be 500, now it's 600, then it was 700, now it's 800, now it's 900, because there's just so much demand for specialists, and that's all you have to do. The thing about specialists too, that's actually very good, is the longer you specialize in something, like the more you understand it, and the more you understand it, the better you become. The better you become, the more referrals you get. And the more referrals you get, the more business you get, and the higher your billing rates. You need to be a specialist. It's very, very important. So, and I don't know what else to say about that, but I can tell you that every attorney in every major law firm that has a lot of business almost always is a specialist. And they are known for being a specialist. They get referrals from other attorneys from being specialists, and they keep getting better and better and better at their work because they're specialists. And it's like that with the business that I'm in. Like, I'm in legal placement business, and the longer I look at this stuff, I do it every single day. And the more I look at it, the more depth I see to it. And I've been doing this every day. I see more and more depth, and I get better and better and better at it. And it's amazing. I look back at the person I was even a few years ago, and I'm amazed at how far I've come. And it's like that for any specialist in any type of business. So the more you specialize, the better you can do. And you should specialize. It's going to be very dangerous for you if you don't specialize. And attorneys, by the way, that when you're looking to switch firms or jobs and so forth, if you specialize, and if you can be marketed as a specialist, which I try to do with all my candidates, and usually I can, you will get jobs. In the corporate work, your capital markets attorney is marketable, your M&A attorney is marketable, but your M&A attorney that does nothing but M&A in the pharmaceutical industry theoretically is more marketable than your general M&A attorney. And your capital markets attorney that raises money for subscription businesses is going to be more marketable probably than your specialist that does all types of M&A. So people want specialists, and that's just how it works. Okay, and that's hopefully a good thing for questions, and we'll do questions at the end today. But the other thing is attorneys need to be familiar with others to get business and clients. So for people to do business with you and choose you as an attorney, you need to be just very familiar with them. And so what this means, it means phone calls on their birthdays. So every year there's people that will leave me voicemail messages and call me and leave me birthday messages. And these are typically very good attorneys that do that. There's no reason for them to do that, but they do. It means sending, sometimes one of the most successful attorneys I know in California, incredible. He will, each year at Christmas, he sends me a long letter with pictures of his kids, and a long letter that's like 3 or 4 pages that talks about a single space, what happened with him and his family over the year. And he's been through divorces and all sorts of things. And every year it's the same thing. And I find it amusing, but I feel very close to this guy. I hardly knew him when I was practicing law, and I call him, and I'm recruiting him now for a firm that I'm doing a search for, where I could probably double or triple his income. And he's got a lot of big clients. So he actually sends out personal letters, probably hundreds of them, telling people how he's doing every year. It's crazy. He's one of the founders of a major law firm. He's no longer working there, but a major law firm with over 1,000 people in it. And this is what he does. It's funny, but he does it. So people that get business, people know you're there, and they appreciate it. This guy's letters to me, talking about his divorce, his dating life, people he's met. It's crazy. It doesn't take a lot of effort to let people know you're there, but people need to know you're there. And so having constant contact is important with people. And so that's another way that people get business. They're constantly in touch with all these people. And it doesn't have to be a phone call. It can be an email on someone's birthday. And it's not just, by the way, an email on their birthday when you're trying to recruit them as a client. It's emails for 10 years, even if they have nothing to give. And just doing that. And my dad tells me that there's some guy that's been calling him on his birthday every year for, 25 years. And it just makes him feel so good. And it's just someone that's just in the background there. And he always brings it up to me. And he probably talks about this guy to other people. And that's very nice. It's a helpful thing to constantly be in touch with people. And you have to do that. You can't just be thinking about that. And so when I was young, as an attorney, I realized, which many attorneys don't, but how important it is to get business. And so I sought out a motivational guru for attorneys, and he was advertising in the back of legal magazines and so forth. And he sent me a cassette, and I remember sitting on my front lawn, which was the size of my desk, and listening to him. And basically, he said, what you need to do is you need to write down every single person. He said, almost everybody knows between 100 and 200 people. He said, you write down every single person and you just consistently contact them. You contact them, hire, just always check in with these people and talk to them and just see how they're doing. Send them an email, send them a card, send them an update, do whatever you can. And you never ask them for work. You just make sure you're in contact with them. And occasionally you tell them what you're up to. And that's all you need to do. And he said that anybody that ever does this gets a ton of business. That's all you need to do. And I want to repeat this process because it's very simple. You go and you write down the name of every single person and you just stay in touch with them. And that means not just updating them on your Facebook. It means messaging them personally. It means calling them. It means checking in with them. It means showing concern for them. And very few people do that. And most people are all about themselves being seen, but not looking at others. And this was the guy's business advice on how to get business. And he'd help all these attorneys generate business. And he was the person that I learned about that had helped lots and lots of attorneys get business. And that was all he taught. And it's very simple. Just stay in touch with anybody and you will get work. And it's very interesting. Think about it and then update them on what you're doing. And several years later, I read another book called The Referral of a Lifetime. And it basically said the same thing. You write down everybody and then you contact them. You don't ask them for work. You don't tell them you're trying to get business. You just stay in touch with people. That's all you need to do. And you get business that way. That's it. Because those people will refer people. They will remember you referring them people, and they will want to give you business in the future because they like being acknowledged and heard of. You just need to be familiar, and then you need to tell them what you're doing. And if you're going to get business, you need to be familiar. And then once you do get clients, you need to stay and be familiar. Very few people, by the way, that I've ever done business with will stay in touch with me. I'll get a Christmas card for them while I'm giving them all this money for doing work with me. I'll get a Christmas card the year I use them, and then we'll just stop contacting me, which is dumb because the hardest way to get a client is to get them initially, not to hold on to them. So you always want to be familiar with clients. And as a matter of fact, I can say every attorney that I have ever in my career used only contacted me during and sent me gifts and stuff or during the time they were actually doing work for me, never another time. Same thing with Christmas cards, only when they were working with me. Then everything stopped. So people that stay in touch with people consistently get work. You should always stay in touch with people. People love that. It's important. Okay. And the other thing I would recommend too is if you want to get business, you need to study marketing. And you need to read articles and books about marketing. Years ago, I started BCG right when I stopped practicing law. And I really wanted to go to business school. And so I enrolled in business school at Stanford, and I was going there. And then I realized I couldn't do two things at once. And I couldn't do this, and I couldn't go there. And my business, I didn't have anyone to run it. And so my girlfriend at the time said to me, if you're not going to do that, you need to give yourself a business education on your own because you need to do it on your own time. And so what I did is I started reading all the books I could about marketing. I went to marketing seminars and I got as interested in as I could. And that was very, very helpful for me. And I can't really recommend to you any specific marketing books because you need to read what's interesting to you, but you need to become a student of marketing. One of the most successful attorneys I know that's very young and has huge books of business, tens of millions of dollars, listens to books on tape all the time about marketing and things. He's just completely into listening to marketing. You need to learn about marketing. You can learn about marketing however you want, but you need to understand marketing because there's all sorts of things to marketing. There's referrals, there's how to market to people, there's all sorts of things, but you need to, marketing is not a dirty word, but something that is very important. And the better you study it, the better you'll become at it. And every form of marketing in the world can translate into getting legal clients. There's all sorts of marketing, but you don't need to spend money to market. You need to learn how to just get attention and get people interested in you and all that sort of thing. But you need to be interested in marketing. And copywriting is interesting. I'm not a good copywriter, but it's certainly something that I would love to have time to. But you need to study marketing. And you just need to get all over it. And it's going to be, you're going to get much more out of it than if you don't. And there's all sorts of marketing books. There's just so many of them, and you need to find things that interested you and read what you're interested in. I've read so many of them. I couldn't even begin to tell you, but I had hundreds of marketing books that I've read, and I had them all in a warehouse, and there were so many of them I didn't have any place to store them. I was allergic to them because the pages were dying, molding over. But you just need to study marketing. You should study it, because your life. What I want to emphasize to you, by the way, and why it's so important to read marketing books and to do books on tape, is because your life depends on it. Do you want to be in a position where you are working for someone else, they can fire you at any time, where you're never going to have any employment stability, where your income's going to be controlled by other people, where you're going to have to never know what's going to happen to you if you leave a law firm and you go into, do you want to be in that sort of position, or do you want to be in a position where you are in control of your destiny? It's really your choice. And if you have your own business, then that means you have your own business. And you get this stuff by understanding marketing, by understanding all the rules I'm telling you. And just because other attorneys in your firm aren't doing the marketing, and you think it's uncool to do marketing, doesn't mean anything. You can rise to such great heights with all this stuff. I know attorneys that have started out in 15-person law firms and now are in huge law firms with massive books of business of $5, $6, $7, $10, $20 million that learned about all this stuff and now have completely different lives because they understand it. And anybody can understand it. You just need to listen to what I'm telling you right now. And you need to study marketing, and you need to learn about this stuff, and you need to become a student of it. You need to listen to stuff I'm saying, because it works and it will change your life and career unlike any other thing. It doesn't matter where you went to law school. It doesn't matter. What matters in the end of the day is if people are paying you for your work. And that's really the most important thing. And those are clients. The other thing that attorneys who get business do is they don't quit. So one big client or several large ones can change your life and your entire practice of law. Just one strategy can help you if you're just always learning about marketing, always staying in touch with people, always doing the stuff. And just because you don't think you're good at marketing doesn't mean you're not good at marketing. One of the things that when I was at this presentation, I remember given by Bill Urquhart and John Quinn, is Bill Urquhart said that one of the best marketers in LA was one of the biggest nerds he knew in LA in terms of getting legal clients. It doesn't matter what kind of personality you have. It doesn't. Some of the best attorneys are the ones that have the most business, are the most introverted. Any type of person can get a lot of work. I would be very comfortable sending my work to an introverted attorney that I thought was a genius in terms of what he did and could get me the best results. You don't need to be like out there like a used car salesman banging the tables. You need to be seen and do all the things that I'm telling you about right now. You need to be really, really good at what you're doing. And it's important. You don't want to quit. And you need to, continually do all this stuff, because if you don't start somewhere, you'll be nowhere. And you just can't give up. And relationships can take years to develop. And if you try one strategy and it doesn't work, you can try another. One of the things that recruiters do in our company a lot of times is they'll try getting candidates somehow. They may try calling or using LinkedIn, and then they'll say, oh, I did it and it didn't work. Well, you need to do this stuff every day. You can do it for a long time and it will work. So my conclusions are pretty quick. Attorneys that are good business generators may hardly practice the law at all. Some attorneys just generate a lot of work, and that's kind of their what they do. And sorry, I'm just looking at this. I'm just kind of remembering. But when I first became a legal recruiter and became known as a good one, I started getting a lot of calls and requests to meet with partners of law firms who wanted to move. And most partners will need 3 or 4 times their anticipated salary to get business. So if a partner wants to make $300,000 a year, they typically need about $1 billion in business. And that's just kind of how it is. And a lot of calls I received were from clients for a law firm and generated very little business. And so many of these partners in AmLaw 100 law firms, if you can believe it, were being paid less than first-year attorneys without any business. This is what happens if you don't have any business. It's just not a good thing. So that's it. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I will come back and answer questions. Thank you. All right. So I am going to take questions real quick, and I just wanted to see if there's anything else I wanted to talk to you guys about. Yeah, there's nothing else really here. But I think the final point I just want to bring up to you guys, and then I'll go to questions, is that this is the business of getting business is there's really nothing that's that much more important for a practicing attorney. So partners without business lose their jobs all the time. And I talk to and see this all the time. Every day I see, when I review resumes that come into BCG, I see countless partners that I know have been let go from firms because they didn't have any work. And so law firms let partners go without business all the time. In-house, if you go in-house, most in-house jobs do not last very long because there's typically, when a CEO changes, they change the legal department, the companies go out of business, and all sorts of things happen. And then if a company grows too much, they need a different type of general counsel than they might have needed when they were smaller. So there's just all sorts of reasons for an attorney to really get business. And it's really the most important thing you can possibly do. So those are kind of the big points I wanted to make to you guys. There's really nothing more important. Your happiness is really going to be dependent on it. And if you don't have business, you're going to be at the mercy of an employer until your retirement. And then just a couple final points are, it's actually fun when you have clients because you have a sense of purpose, and that's just a huge thing. So get business. And I would recommend, I've written a lot of articles about this stuff, so I'd also recommend reviewing any other information I have. Okay, so let's go to questions. And so ask as many questions as you have. I will answer all of the questions that have been answered or asked, and I will stay here as long as it takes to kind of answer all these questions. And I love getting these questions, and I apologize if this was kind of a long webinar so far. I just thought the topic was very, very important today, so I wanted to make sure that I got through it. The first question is, I'm curious about where free advice ends and establishing value for expertise begins. I do free consults for family and friends since you never know where it will lead. But at some point, you don't want to give it away for free. Do you have a bright line rule about this, or is it case by case? Yes. So even though I'm not a practicing attorney, I get questions from people all the time, neighbors, just tons and tons of people. And because I don't even practice law, I often find it quite annoying. So I try to give the quickest answers I can, that are accurate. But most of the time I tell them I just don't know the answer. So if you don't know the answer and it's in a different practice area than yours, you can always give referrals, which is nice. And then if you give referrals, people will remember it. Other stuff you can do is you should give advice to the extent you can. I just would be very careful about coming across kind of as a snob or anything like that and being rude to people about asking for advice. And I've known attorneys that do that too. And so if you do have the ability to answer people's questions and so forth, you should definitely try to do that. But just be careful and don't try to advertise you're an attorney. The idea really is often you want to say, can I think about that and get back to you? And then sometimes call these people and have a personal call. I had an experience once where I was taking acting lessons years ago, and all these people in the acting class found out I was an attorney, and it didn't matter to them that I wasn't practicing. They just figured that I would know about all this stuff. And so they had all these issues with helping me negotiate contracts for them to be in commercials and contracts with their agents and personal disputes, dog bites, and it was crazy. Everybody needed help. And unfortunately, it wasn't really something that I was set up to do, and it became kind of annoying. It got to the point where the guy that was leading the acting class wanted me to file lawsuits for him. And it's just, so you just need to be very careful. I agree. But at the same time, anything you can do to get recommendations is helpful. Okay, I am an attorney in North Carolina with 30 years of experience in private practice and I'm completely happy at my firm. I'm desperately looking for help for my son. He has graduated from Campbell University Law School this spring and is having a difficult time finding employment. The job market is very weak for new attorneys. I've been following your website and posts for some time. Can you recommend steps a new attorney should take in today's legal employment climate? Yes. So what I would recommend doing if I was a new attorney, the first thing to remember, and I think a lot of people don't always think about this, but your career is a long one. So you start off practicing anywhere from, in most cases, the ages of 24 to 27 or so. And there's attorneys practicing 50 years later. So regardless of where you start your career, you're going to end up somewhere else. So it's not that important to necessarily start in the biggest firms. As a matter of fact, I think sometimes upward mobility is a much more preferable way to start your career, and because you appreciate where you are later. But at the same time, if your son is trying to find a new job, what I always recommend doing is searching for all the firms in different geographic locations. So I don't know where you are in North Carolina, but I would search for all the attorneys and places and in that geographic location and see if you can help, if he can, and he should send his resume in an unsolicited fashion to those places rather than just in addition to applying to law firms and other places. You can also apply to government offices. There's always government openings and so forth, so that could be helpful. But that would be basically how I would recommend doing it. But anytime I've seen an attorney do a search where they are applying to a lot of different places in unsolicited fashion, and they're doing that in areas of the country where they want to work, it works because there's always going to be someone that's going to have a business need. And so it's important to kind of do searches that way. The other question is, do you ask other attorneys for referrals? And if so, how? Yes. So it is a good idea to ask other attorneys for referrals. But the way to ask other attorneys for referrals, attorneys typically will not directly ask other attorneys for referrals. So they will often send cards and notices to other attorneys. So they will tell them that they're an expert in a certain type of case, or they help collect judgments, or they do all these different sorts of things. So that's one of the ways that people get referrals from other attorneys, is they become known for something. And then if you do need referrals from other attorneys, the best way to get them really is to get close to other attorneys and have those attorneys like you and want to refer business to you. And the other final thing that I said in this webinar is also to be seen kind of as an expert. Okay, question about specializing. I graduated from law school 20 years ago to no avail. I was on law review and did ITAP. I worked for Citibank, edited law books at Matthew Bender, and was a grinder at a white shoe law firm for a minute. I did debt collection, demoralized, and went to Wall Street as a broker. That doesn't sound that bad. That didn't go much better in the long run, as brokers went online for $25 per round turn. Now I would like to set up a solo practice in full hustle mode if it makes sense. Do you recommend a good resource for the basics of building a niche towards employment law? So that's a good question about the solo practice. I don't know the best type of solo practice to open. One thing I will say about opening solo practices is it can be difficult to get hired or to get paid. So you need to find kind of the right practice area and the right location and all those sorts of things. And that's really going to be the crux of how successful you are, is how well you choose the practice area you're going to open. If you do open something where you do like personal injury, you have to remember you're going to be going against insurance companies. And insurance companies are experts in getting, D stands for defense, meaning and delay, but and delaying cases and making them expensive for you before you get paid. That can be difficult. If you do employment law, it's sort of the same thing. If you're filing cases, if you're defending employers, that can be a good thing, but it's very difficult to get employers as clients. So you have to think about what is the best practice area for me. And that's really, when you start a solo practice, that's, in my opinion, what the most important question is. So some solo practices are the ones that I think are good, are ones where you can charge flat fees many times. So those are things like bankruptcy sometimes, or even trust in the states can be good. Getting clients in those practice areas can be much easier than some other ones. Other practice areas that can be good are often family law. However you did, or people can get up to speed very, very quickly in those practice areas. I've seen people take a long time off and then go back and start their own practices doing those and end up doing very well. So I would think about it. You could potentially do a solo practice in those types of practice areas. But everything you're saying here, like you were on law review and you didn't like the firms you were at and stuff. None of that really matters if you have your own practice. I mean, no one cares about any of that, and you're just kind of a business person. And the nice thing about practicing law is really what a law degree is it's a license to open your own business. That's, people never think of it that way, because now there's these big firms and stuff, but for hundreds of years, that's what a law degree's been. It's a license in the state bar. It's a license to open a business that can be very lucrative. So no one teaches this stuff. I'm teaching to some extent right now, but you have a license to open a business, which is hard to get. So you should use that license. And if you want to have your own business, that's great. You should go do it. But I would be very careful about what practice area you choose when you open your own business. Okay. Be willing to address the problems and opportunities for long-term government attorneys who want to go into private sector, but for obvious reasons don't have a book of business. Yeah, so it depends on the type of government attorney you are. So most government attorneys have experience in something. So it may be they may have experience in litigation, they may have experience in environmental work, they may have experience in social security law or white collar work. I don't know what it is, but typically you need to figure out what type of experience you have and then how they may have experience in education law and how it's relevant to law firms. The nice thing about law firms is most law firms do whatever type of work you're doing inside the government. There's some type of corollary for what type of work you'd be doing with the government in a law firm. And so you need to find that. And so what I love now, by the way, is for finding information about law firms is Google can be very effective. So say you are an education lawyer working for the government. You can find law firms that do education law and you can just enter in a bunch of different locations of the country and then you can apply to those firms. And that can be very, very effective because the law firms love saying that they have various people that used to work for the government in different government organizations. So, and you don't always need a book of business. Attorneys transition from the government into private practice all the time. It's just a question of how big the firm is and how much money it's going to pay and the size of it. But you can always find someone that's going to hire you. It's not a problem. So I would work on that and do what you can in that respect. And I hope that helps. But yeah, government attorneys can easily transition. You just have to be open geographically. And one other final thing I want to say to everyone here that's on this call that's looking for a job. So what you need to understand anytime you're looking for a job is anytime you're looking in the largest markets, which would be New York, Washington, D.C., you know what I'm talking, but anytime you're looking in the largest markets for a job, the largest firms are going to be the hardest to get jobs in because there's lots and lots of people in large cities. And the smallest firms are going to be the easiest because there's fewer people trying to work in them. So you're always better off working or trying to get jobs if the market's very, very tight, trying to get jobs in smaller firms in the largest markets. And the smallest firms in the largest markets get the fewest applications because everyone's trying to work for the bigger firms. And so the ones that are difficult to find and aren't on all the list of the top firms and so forth are going to be the easiest. The hardest firms are going to be the largest ones and the ones everyone knows about. But just as the larger markets are difficult, the smaller markets are going to be the easiest. So if you are from a small town or from a small market, or your spouses or you have relatives there, those are always the best markets to try to get a job in if you're having a hard time in a big market because they get fewer applications. And so anytime you go to a smaller market, you're going to have a much easier time getting a job. And I used to work for a judge in northern Michigan, and that's a hard market to attract people to go to work in. They didn't know he was in northern Michigan because it was in Detroit, but obviously fewer people want to work in northern Michigan than they want to work in Chicago or Detroit or Cleveland. So looking in smaller markets is genius. All the time come up against situations where something like an attorney's in New York City and he's from, Australia, and he's lost his job with a big firm. And if he doesn't find a job in 4 weeks, he's going to be deported and have to go back to Australia. And his wife and family are all living in New York. And what is he going to do? So I make it very simple. I say, okay, well, great. There's an opening for someone that has securities experience in Traverse City, Michigan. There's an opening for someone with securities experience in, I don't know, take your pick. You're talking about small areas in a town in Montana, a good firm there. And no one's applying to these places. So you'd have to be insane. So I have one attorney, by the way, that I got. He was a great attorney. He'd been at, I think, Sherman and Sterling, a securities attorney, lost his job. And I got him an interview with a great firm, in my opinion, one of the better firms in the country, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he decided that for whatever reason that he could not bear to live in Grand Rapids, even though Grand Rapids is a very nice town. I think it's great. I have a lot of family there. And anyway, so he didn't take the interview, and now he's in Australia, and his family's in New York City, and has been there the whole pandemic. So it's just ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't you go to work in a smaller market? So that's what people don't do and realize. And it's more important, by the way, the only thing more important, there's nothing more important than staying employed. You need to stay employed as long as you can, and you need to go where the work is. And if an attorney's not employed, it just shows a lack of enthusiasm for finding a job and your inability to help yourself get a job. So you always need to keep your job, keep working. Okay, let's see here. Okay, your website and articles have been like a favorite movie over the years. I don't watch them every day, but when I do, they always seem to reveal something new and worthwhile. So thank you. I'm a legislative and regulatory specialist and become known as a national expert in my niche of law. Great. The problem is that my niche is so highly specialized, it may be difficult for recruiters and potential employers to see what value I can offer them. Recently, I started taking steps towards an exit strategy. The first one came in October when I made a lateral move to acquire a better title, Chief Deputy Counsel, and some management experience. Now, though, I've been nominated for a senior leadership position, which is sort of the holy grail in the government. Senior executive pay and status without the normal problems that accompany the senior executive status label. There will only be 3 to 5 in our very large office, but even it is a promotion with a jump in pay, I'm worried it could further isolate me in the private sector. I wonder if you would be willing to weigh in with your advice. Okay, well, I don't think anytime you go into a more prestigious role in the government, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I do think that having a position to begin with is a very good thing. And a promotion is a very good thing. Being very specialized is problematic. So typically people in government will always be kind of looking for an exit strategy and in the private sector. And so you need to watch very closely what other people that have been in your department and so forth have been doing and or where they've been going after they're done. And then those are kind of the tea leaves about what you can do as well. And then you also need to be very aware of the companies and so forth that you may be encountering in your work and where things are. So that's just another kind of thing that I would recommend. But in terms of looking out for yourself, that would be how I would recommend it. You can always talk to various people about things you can do. So what I would recommend would be being in touch with various recruiters and being on their roadmap in case things come up can always be helpful. Some of the best attorneys I know, by the way, will have very good relationships with outside recruiters, and they'll use that just because they want to be aware if things come up, and that's always a good thing. I can think of one guy I'm in particular that's in the, he's a finance attorney, and I hear from him every couple months, just checking in, being very nice, and thank you. And even though I'm not working with him, he's just always asking me if I know of any opportunities. And of all the thousands of people that I hear from every month, this is the only person that I can remember that ever contacts me asking if I can give him advice. And so if I can help keep my eye out for him, which is really nice. So it makes me feel worthwhile, and doing that with recruiters and other people in the market can be very useful. I would also, if you do have this position, I would recommend checking and watching what is happening to your peers and being very close to them. And if you're becoming very specialized, that's how I'd recommend. And then also researching the firms. Anybody that may have any type of connection to whatever you're doing with the government would be important as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it says here, I'm a Harvard Law grad who practiced for a year at a big firm before exiting law to pursue multiple personal dreams, which did not work out, becoming a psychologist or a writer. Now I'd like to know what my best chances are re-entering the practice. I have a master's degree in both psychology and information systems, but little in the way of employment history. I may ask your advice. Okay, well, that's a good question. So if you went to Harvard Law School and you obviously have a lot of aptitude, at least in terms of your SATs and grades and promise, meaning your mind works like a good lawyer, and then you decided you wanted to do other things, which means that for whatever reason, you weren't really settled into practicing law for whatever reason. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a famous line that I've been thinking about a lot recently where it's a book called Think and Grow Rich, and it is about making money. And I read it for the first time when I was maybe 17 years old. But it says something like most people don't become successful until they're at least 45 years old. And the reason is because there's just all this stuff you kind of need to get out of your system, like these ideas, and you make bad mistakes and you make bad decisions and stuff when you're young. And then sometimes it takes people into their 50s until they've done that. And so there's nothing wrong with the fact that you've tried all these different things. Your path after trying these different personal dreams wasn't leading you to, it's not something you stuck with. So you kind of dabbled with a bunch of different things. And if you want to know about how to re-enter, it's something you have to get enthusiastic about. Lots of people dabble in stuff. Your improvement comes when you focus. Plenty of people that I know have dabbled in what I do in the legal placement and recruiting business and then end up doing something else. And the worst thing you can do is become a dabbler. Everything comes when you specialize and commit. So if you do want to be in the practice of law, then you need to commit and go wherever you go and stick it out. There's a book that I read by, Social Intelligence a long time ago in the mid-1990s. And it's the same thing now. I mean, your social intelligence really determines how successful you are. So obviously there's lots of smart people that go to Harvard and Yale and Stanford law schools and so forth. But what you do with that information in terms of your skills and what you commit to is really where your ultimate success is going to come from. So I'd really recommend committing. Someone will hire you. If you're a Harvard law grad and you have experience from a big firm, you can get a job. A large law firm won't hire you or shouldn't, because they will assume that you'll leave again. And so you need to kind of start from the ground up. And after 5 or 6 years of proving yourself and hopefully getting business, someone will hire you. A big firm will again. So you can definitely transition back into it. And there's nothing wrong with what you've done. I wanted to reach out to you and ask you the following. In your experience, do you find it easier to place attorneys in legal positions in Southern California if they have a few years of experience as an associate? Yes, it's generally easier. If an attorney has more than 1 year of experience, or even 2 years, they're easier to place, especially through recruiters, because law firms want to hire people that they don't need to train and that show some employment stability. So if you've been in an employer for 2 years and the employer is familiar with it, with your employer, then the employer that hires you next is going to know that what you're doing, and it's good for them to take a risk on you. So there's really nothing to worry about with that, other than, but yeah, the more experience you have, the better. And that's the thing, is you have to get experience to get hired as an attorney. So you definitely want to get experience the most you can. Okay, let me just see here. Can you recommend any marketing books? Yeah, so some marketing books that I like are, I'm trying to think of some of the best marketing books. There's a lot of marketing books. There's a book about branding called The 21 Immutable Laws of Marketing. There's some other marketing books. I'm trying to think of some other marketing books that I like. There's so many of them that I've read over the years. What I would do is I would kind of go in and I would just do a search and find what are the most popular marketing books out there, and kind of the most popular ones of all time, and just start reading those, because most of the things about marketing, nothing really changes. They're all marketing pretty much always stays the same, and the rules of marketing, and that's kind of what I would do. I would be happy to recommend books. I've just honestly, I've read so many marketing books that my brain is kind of freezing up right now, but there's just tons and tons and tons of them. Yeah, so let's hear. Will you be making your slides available to attendees? Yes, I will. Those are going to be on the or.com site after this. You can see them there. If you go there, let's see here. So you recommend specializing for success. And yeah, as many questions as anyone has, I'm happy to answer them all. So just keep asking questions and I will ask them as long as you guys are on the call or meeting. Do you recommend specializing for success? Do you have recommendations for identifying an area of specialty? Should one leap away from general areas of moderate success and take the risk of moving towards something more enjoyable, or something that would be a good niche even if it might not be so enjoyable? How should computational level, sophistication, and resources be considered in specialized decisions? Okay, well, that's a great question. So the first thing that I would recommend is you always want to specialize in something that you're interested in. You need to be interested in it, and it should be something that, like, you don't want to be specializing in something where it's not interesting for you, because it should be something where you actually get stimulated for it. So the best types of jobs and the best types of work are when you're excited to start work in the morning, and where you're excited to learn more, and where you're excited to study it, and where you like it, and where you like finding different things. And so for some people that's patent law, for other people that's tax, for some people that's even real estate, for other people that's corporate law. It should be something that you get kind of a charge out of. It should also be something where you can see yourself being very, very good at it. So for me personally, like, I saw that I could be good at litigation, but I think I would have made a horrible corporate attorney. And because I just didn't like the way I'm more verbal, and it's just, so you have to like, people do things for the wrong reasons. Like, a lot of times people become corporate attorneys because they think they're interested in business, but they might be very interested in writing and arguing and coming up with arguments and so forth. And so it's very important that you specialize in something that's interesting to you. What I will say to you in terms of specialties, and I think I've said this before, but I want to make sure I make the point again. People that do well in transactional disciplines, which are things like real estate, corporate, finance, patent law, things like that tend to be math and science type people that gravitate towards math and science. And that just means that that part of their brain that specializes in numbers and things is more dominant. People that do well in things like labor and employment, litigation, things that involve writing and so forth tend to be more the opposite side of the brain dominates. So typically you're going to be a little bit better off in the things that you gravitate towards. Most people are more interested in math than they are in reading, or more interested in reading than they are math. And people just have these kind of natural inclinations. And those inclinations many times run in families. So the way your parents talked and thought. I know someone that's extremely good at chemistry, and so are his kids, and they're just off the charts good at chemistry. And it's, a way of thinking. And he probably communicates verbal ideas and thinking in a way that to his kids, it makes them good at it too. And his wife was like an airline stewardess. So I don't know if she was interested in chemistry too, but the point is that people that think in a certain way are typically better off in different disciplines. I know one guy that was very, very good at like math and went to Wharton and everything, and then became a doctor, extremely unhappy because he wasn't in something that he was good at. So you should go in that's science versus math. And so that is the same part of the brain, but he was very, very interested in math and very, very interested in science, but thought he should be a doctor. So it kind of depends on you. But you need to go into an area where you believe you're going to do well, and something that gets you excited and charged up. The other thing is you should take a risk of moving towards something more enjoyable. Most attorneys will specialize within whatever they're doing. So if you're a corporate attorney, you can specialize within whatever you're doing in credit cards in your specialty. So the reason I was thinking of credit cards was I remember when I was in law school, this partner came from Sherman and Sterling and was interviewing attorneys at our school. And he said he made partner at Sherman and Sterling because he only attorney that was very good at doing something like securitizing credit card debt, which was meaning companies had all this credit card stuff on their books. And so he would take it and sell it to another company that would service it. And then he would get, and the companies would get an infusion of cash. And he just had to fund more credit card purchases. I don't know, but he had the specialty and he was the only person that knew it, how to do it. And that was the only reason he made partner at this big firm, which I thought was kind of cool. So if you become a specialist in something, you'll do much better. You'll be much better off. So you should do something that's enjoyable, but where there's less competition. Right now, as I talk, there's this whole big thing in the past several months of data privacy being a big practice area where people are doing very well. And law firms can't hold on to data privacy people because they're being recruited away to in-house jobs where the pay starts at $250,000 a year. That's just now. So that's the how practice area. So people that are doing that are doing well. But you should go into things that are interesting to you. That would be how I would recommend doing that in making your specialization decisions. And just becoming fired up about something. When you're fired up about something, it's much easier to write and talk about it and all sorts of things. And then clients will remember you for that. Okay. Do you have any ideas for getting business from clients from previous firms? Yes. So the best way to get clients from your previous firms is just to do a very, very good job with those clients while you're at that firm. And that's really the big thing. But what you need to remember is most of those clients will have relationships with partners and other people in that law firm. And so they're not just going to go to, just because you did work for them, they're not going to really be able to be pried away unless you do exceptional work for them and you're really able to help them. What tends to happen, the reason those clients are pulled away is a partner will get a lot of business and will start ignoring clients, and then they'll give the work to someone else, and then that person will go do the work, do work for them at the firm, and then they'll leave and take the client. So it just depends, but I would stay in touch with the clients and let them know what you're doing and just be visible, like I said, and contact them and never ask them for work directly. If they contact you, they know that's what you're asking for. But if you ask for the work, then that's going to make you look bad. So never ask for the work. Just always contact them, let them know what you're doing, send them announcements if you get something happens and so forth, but never actually ask that client for work. That's not something you should be doing. But if they come to you, then all bets are off. Let's see. Thank you for this webinar. I wish I'd heard it early in my career. I had to figure out this the hard way, although I'm now on my way to changing my career by doing the things you're talking about. It would have been a lot easier if I figured it out sooner. Thank you. Yeah, I do hope everyone that's on this webinar really does listen to this advice, because if you're still on it, this has been a long webinar so far, 2 hours, then you've hopefully gotten a lot out of it. My big point is that You need to be a student of this stuff, and you need to remember it, and you need to kind of put it front and center and always keep it up there. Something that's important, because do what you can. So yeah, thank you. Okay, let's see here. I am in my last year of law school and I'm clerking for a judge next year after graduation. I'd like to start writing articles and do what I can to get attention, both from a future firm and clients. Does this work the same for a student? I guess I feel odd as a student writing articles about such things. Yeah, I don't know that you need to write articles at this point about anything. You kind of need to figure out what you're going to do. My advice for new attorneys and people that are still in law school is to really just use law school to figure out the types of practice areas and so forth that interest you and the type of work that interests you the most, and to just get the best jobs you can. And then when you're clerking, the same thing. Throw yourself into that work, and then when you start a job after clerking, throw yourself into that, and things will come up. And just remember kind of the left brain, right brain stuff. Are you more math and science? Are you more reading and writing? And then think about how you can specialize. So always look at what you're doing as a way to specialize. But all this stuff really doesn't become important until you've been working for a couple of years. So you need to just get as much experience as you can early on. Do you suggest an attorney with 7+ years of experience in Chicago work on getting business before applying to a position in another firm? No, you don't need to. If you can, that's great. Oh, the other question too is, does an advanced degree or LLM or MBA improve your employability, job security? No, so it doesn't. If you have 7+ years of experience and you do have a job, my advice would be to work on getting business probably actually before applying to another firm. If the work in your firm is slowing down, you need another job, then there's nothing wrong with applying to other firms. And you should go someplace where there's a lot of work before trying to get a job. The other thing I would say is an LLM or MBA does not necessarily improve your employability or job security. LLMs in certain practice areas like tax, or if you're a healthcare attorney, maybe healthcare law or executive compensation and a few other things, can improve your job security to some extent, but not really. The only thing you can ever do to improve your job security, and I think if there's any point to this webinar, it's this, is make sure you get as much experience as you possibly can, as much business as you possibly can, and just work on it. And the thing is it's like compound interest. If you start building the relationships now, you're going to have more relationships and more business 5 years from now than if you start 3 years from now. So the earlier you start, the better off you're going to be. Okay. I would like to get your advice on my current situation, as I appreciate how honest and straightforward you are in your articles. When I began law school, I struggled my first semester, but since I recovered, making it to around the top 20% of my class and scoring in the top 5% last semester. However, I want to work in a law firm, and I washed out of on-campus interviews since they only saw one bad semester and one good semester. I made some strong connections with the managing partners in larger firms in Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, etc., but with no luck yet on finding a position for this summer. Is it still possible at this point in time to find summer associate positions in large firms, 100+ attorneys for the summer? If so, how can I access them? Well, that's a good point. There's nothing wrong with having a bad first semester and the last semester. But what I would recommend is it's not too late to find summer associate spots, but you should apply in lots of different markets, would be my biggest piece of advice. And then also once the new year starts, if you still don't have a summer associate position, I would say in my letters to firms, if you don't have any summer associate positions available, I would love to have the experience to come in and work for you is to see how things work out, and then go there and just blow their socks off. That would be my recommendation. As a second-year attorney associate, it is very important, if you do want to work in a law firm, to do whatever you can to get a position in a law firm after your second summer. So before your second summer, because it shows other law firms that you want to work with them. So it's very difficult to get a first-year associate job if you don't have experience in the summer. So whatever you can do, I would try to get a position in a law firm. It doesn't matter where it is. And just remember, again, a career in a law firm can be 50+ years. So just because you start in a small law firm is completely meaningless. Go someplace bigger later. Okay, let's see. I hate my job. I'm a workers' compensation attorney, barely. We handle the settlement of workers' compensation claims. They don't send me in the hard cases so I can learn more. I volunteered to do depositions, and I was told to focus on settling cases. I work at a firm that has way too many clients and not enough staff. My clients are needy, emotional, demanding, and sometimes rude. My pay is bad. My clients are constantly wanting updates, but I can't give them what they want because many times there's no progress. They want to be kept in the loop, and I just want to do my job and settle cases. I want to move to DC. I've been trying to get an attorney's position, but it's hard because I'm not barred in Virginia or Maryland. I've been told it takes a lot of time. I don't know if I can make it. I don't want to be fired for going off on a client, but I can't stay. What should I do? I'm at my wit's end. Okay, well, it sounds like you're having a fairly typical problem, and you have a fear of being overworked and being given very uninteresting work that you don't like. So that does not sound fun, and I agree with you. There are lots of workers' compensation firms in every city, so I think you need a different type of workers' compensation firm, and if it's not doing that, then something else. And I would really recommend doing your best to try to find another position where you're at, where you can get better experience. If you don't want to do workers' compensation, it is fairly easy to transition, I believe, into different types of work. So you could certainly transition into a different type of, litigation or something else. And I would recommend doing that. Working in DC, there's lots of workers' compensation firms in DC. I don't know why you would need to be barred in Virginia or Maryland, but maybe you need to. And I would try to make the most of it. And maybe you can develop a system for keeping this information more organized, or find a database or something online that will make that easier. I don't know really the best way what to tell you, but those are some suggestions that I would give you to try to really improve the whole system for the next person that comes along, and really kind of set up a positive memory of yourself after you leave. So do whatever you can to really do a great job there would be one thing I would recommend. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear. I also understand how difficult it must be to work with these clients, because they want to get money, and many times they may, have serious issues and so forth. But you just need to kind of develop a system and try to make the most of it. And it's tough, I know. But the thing is that what's nice about the experience you're having now is it's only going to get better. And so if you can tolerate this, you can probably tolerate anything. And I know that when I used to work outdoors, that was very, very difficult. When you're trying to get work done and your face is peeling off, and your skin is it's just so. I would recommend just doing whatever you can and realizing that something better will come along, and applying to other types of firms and taking care of yourself. So that means exercising and just getting better and better despite being in this horrible situation. There's a story I'd like to tell. It's about my soccer coach when I was very young, and he was from Cuba and had been in a prison there, and was in prison as a political prisoner for being against, I don't know, the Castro or something. And he said when everybody else around him was going to hell and using drugs and being unhappy and sitting around, he would every day would get up and figure out a way to find a razor and shave, and to keep his hair clean, and take a shower and exercise and do push-ups and sit-ups and run around the yard. And then one day he got an opportunity to walk out of the prison somehow. I don't know what it was, or there was visiting hours or something, and someone brought him a clean change of clothes, and he just walked right out with all the visitors, because he was the only one that didn't look all beaten down and horrible like the prisoners. So the important thing to remember is anytime you're in a really bad situation, is you want to do whatever you can to make yourself even better when you're in that situation. So, okay, well, that's all I think we have today. So I appreciate everyone listening to this webinar and being on it. And then we will connect next week. And once again, I do thank you for being on the webinar today.